on stage CEO Toni Luhti from Platform of Trust. I'm intrigued, Toni, also. The name of the company is quite interesting. If you could tell us a bit about that as well.
I will.
The stage is yours.
Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. So I'm coming from a Platform of Trust, and as the name says, we are working on a platform industry, but I have to be sorry for the lady on the second row. She told that she would like to hear what we have to offer, but I'm not going to fulfill that requirement now, because I'm gonna explain what we have learned. And you know, talking about the platform economy in general, it's pretty much about the sharing and interconnections between stakeholders and, you know, co-value creation, co-value capturing, and so on. But whenever we are discussing with smart cities about the platform economy in a big scale, it all comes back to the data. So I wanted to be a little bit more specific this time and tell a little bit about the data platform economy and what we have learned. So I'm not actually pointing my words to any specific cities this time. I'm saying in general how we feel it and what kind of obstacles we are facing and so on, so you will get a comprehensive picture how the platform economy is transforming. So let's get started. Typically when we are discussing with cities about the platform economy, and we are, you know, facing a situation whenever there is a platform term mentioned. You know, the platform term is coming from an IT industry, so it's kind of have a technological echo on the word or the term, which means that they are, you know, the decision makers are asking CTO, CIO, or whatever to join the discussion, and then the rest 1.5 hours at least will be spent on discussing GDPR, or will be, you know, about the data security or APIs or data standards or whatever. And all the value and co-creation part will left behind. So there is no actual focus, because it's easy to find problems from the technological point of view instead of focusing what you can do with the data in a platform economy. So there is 5 key findings from the cities, and 3 of them are more or less typical for the data-driven or data-based decision-making process. That's quite easy to understand. You would like to avoid risks and estimate costs and, you know, create some kind of understanding what is happening and what is not. But only a couple of persons from these interviews or meetings were brave enough to say that there's plenty of things what we don't understand. You know, you can have KPIs and you can measure many things from the data right now. But whenever there is a red light on your KPIs, you know how to fix them. You know how to, you know, make actions and make them green again. But you don't really understand the root causes, the long causal connections from the data chains. And then one example of this would be the things that cities do not understand how the people flows are affecting on energy consumption. Energy consumption is working as a separate unit or separate team or whatever in a city, and the people flow management, traffic control, and everything else is having a separate team as well. So they are not interconnected on the city platform, right? So I think that we should be brave enough to say that there is plenty of things in smart cities that are actually much more complex than our human brains can understand. And this is why we need to start to gather data and start to gather all the direct and indirect data, so we can actually find these relations between factors that are actually impacting the operations of our city. But then there is one kind of general findings from cities, that all the cities are focusing on innovations and experimentations. But whenever there's an innovation, it's kind of focusing on the vertical segment, right? Smart lighting or transportation or whatever. And the impacts, the indirect impacts of these innovations are not taken into account whenever there is not enough data and the data is not collected as a one consolidated location. So After these findings, typically we will end in a discussion, probably because of our Scandinavian history. If there's 10 persons in a room, 9 of them will start to find excuses why we should not do anything. And 1 of them will start to find excuses why we should actually test something. So we will face multiple different kinds of obstacles that are blocking or preventing cities to try out these new innovations and try out to understand something much more deeper. And these problems can be classified to 4 individual categories. One is economical category, one is organizational category, one is technological category, and then the last one is the cognitive category. So typically when a city is combined from the multiple departments and they are having this kind of a joint meeting to evaluate how they can use data and generate understanding, all of them are looking at the data from their own point of view. So they have a different cognitive model inside their heads. So they cannot make a consensus where to start, where to prioritize, and where to spend all the monies. And then, they have invested a lot of money for some technologies and something else. So then there is an economical obstacle. And then there is kind of organizational obstacle. So cities typically cannot find the owner who is running this kind of platform economy on the city level. They can find the owner from each sub-department, but not on the city level. And then, all the other obstacles are actually forcing and, making the transformation and experimentation much more harder. So, at the end of this discussion, again, they will get, this kind of a logical chain wherever all the persons, all they say that we have data and we know that it's vital, it's crucial for our successful operations in tomorrow's environment, and then they have like hundreds of different solutions, hundreds of different databases and whatever, and the data is not interconnected to any other data anyway. And then, they will start to think, should we connect all these systems and solutions together? And one integration is taking like 2 months, 6 months, whatever. It's gonna cost like 20,000 euros. Let's say that all the cities have 7 different solutions, what must be connected together or integrated together. And if one integration costs 20,000 euros, then it means that 21 integrations, if all solutions are connected together, it's going to lead them to invest 420,000 euros with my simple math. And that could be a blocker as well. If you're going to need 21 integration, you're going to think, where should we start? Do we have such a money? And is this really necessary? Can we live with the less data? Can we make more better decisions and more shorter causal connections if we just don't integrate all these systems together? And they will fail. At the end, they will have a limited point of view for the data, limited understanding for the decision making, and so on. But that's not even the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that this kind of integration model will lead their business model to an incapability. And it means that they cannot change it. All the changing costs on the business model level are increasing heavily whenever they have these static connections, which means that when there is a new solution, new integration needed or whatever, they're gonna spend multiple times of that money what they previously did. So, after we have tackled these topics, then we will start to ask what kind of data cities have. What is the data what they would like to use? What kind of data they actually do have? And in Finland, for an example, there is a 5G expansion going on, and narrowband IoT spreading all over, and there is multiple sensors what you can utilize to gather data. But it's expected that during calendar year 2019, there will be 4 million new devices connected to internet from thousands of vendors. So how any of decision makers can actually decide which of these sensors or hardware are the winning hardwares that we're supposed to select right now for our data category. From millions of sensors. How you gonna do it? It's impossible. So you cannot do it. You cannot select a winning one because there is constantly more and more new technologies coming from Asia and US, and they are more advanced than the previous models, and they are less power consumption and so on. So you cannot take the best of the best because there will be much better in the next few years, even few months. So what you need to do is that you need to support them all. So if you would like to support them all, that will lead you in a situation that probably this lightning vendor has a different data model than this one. And what happens then? These data models cannot be aligned, so the data is not machine readable. And all the artificial intelligence solutions, all the machine learning algorithms are based on the machine readable formats. So there is plenty of new, fancy artificial intelligence solutions on the market, kind of a visualization tools, 3D modeling tools, whatever, but you need to set the data for them. And if you need to support all these vendors, all this hardware, all the existing solutions what you have, you are kind of in trouble, right? So as you can guess, this is a direct call for the data platforms. And there is a couple of things on data platforms what must be considered. So first thing is that you need to be neutral. You cannot support any kind of specific data standard, API or ontology or whatever. You need to be neutral. That is the only way how you can ensure that your business is capable to utilize these new modern technologies in the future. And you need to be able to trust the data. So let's say that you have tens of millions energy consumption bill on an annual basis, which means that if you need to trust the data what you are gathering, and then you are utilizing it with the artificial intelligence solution, and then you will do automatic controlling for the energy consumption. You need to be able to trust the data so it don't harm your energy consumption processes and increase the bill, right? So there's two important points and many of obstacles. One thing is to enable the neutrality of your business model and increase the flexibility. Always keep in mind that you need to be able to change what you are doing right now. This kind of an old-fashioned way to buy a solution and keep it for 7 to 10 years, it is out of question. 7 years from now on, and you're supposed to stick with the old CRM or citizen happiness solution or whatever. It's kind of a risky business, right? So, my suggestion here is that please make the data work for you, keep it neutral, and enable all the data streams by data platforms, and make it so that all the stakeholders in your platform economy can take the benefit of data and understand it much better. Thank you.
Thank you, Toni. Maybe we'll take the advantage you gave us with 1 spare minute for a question.
Feel free.
Nothing. In that case, we'll... Yes, there it is.
You must get prize for this. You are the only one every time.
That was dangerous.
Really interesting that you mentioned energy, and that takes us back to Hendrik's presentation. Do you propose any way to integrate this energy consumption into these models for decision making? Because I think it's a key issue that we are usually not talking about, that with the new products, the life cycle is really short. So we implement, for example, a smart lighting in a city, thinking about energy efficiency, but then we might have to, discard it in a few years because the next gadget is not compatible.
I love your thinking because your brains are working exactly like mine. So cities are a combination of people, of buildings, of transportation, and energy is related to all of them. So my answer is definitely yes. I think all the energy, factors must be taken into account on every measurement on the smart city level. Definitely.
Thank you, Toni, for your exact answer in exactly 1 minute. And next we will have